I'm Shannon Watkins, and I'm here today with the president of the Martin Center, Jenna A, to discuss how universities can face this new landscape in the face of the coronavirus. The outbreak has sent a shockwave through academia, and colleges and universities are being forced and will continue to be forced to adapt to unprecedented challenges. Many of those challenges will be financial. The federal and state governments are taking a hard hit, and that will undoubtedly impact funding for higher education. So Jenna, my first question for you is, what's the impact of COVID-19 on university budgets?
Well, I mean, the immediate impact is that there is money available from the federal government, the Higher Education Emergency Fund, CARES Act money, and most universities have access to that. But that's a one-time infusion of cash. And compared to the overall budget of a university, it's small. So even if universities do take it, and some have been giving it back, like Harvard and Stanford and Princeton, universities that do take it it's one time. And so the big picture is that universities will be taking hits in every other category. Family resources will be diminished. They won't be where they were before. Some students who were planning to work to pay won't be able to get jobs. And so obviously money from tuition and fees won't be available as much as it was in the past. State budgets are obviously taking a hit because taxes are just not coming in the way that they were budgeted for and planned for. I've heard 10% tax revenue decline, at least in North Carolina. Local budgets are in the same position. And of course, endowments are going to be hit and private giving is going to be hit as well. So university budgets, aside from this one-time infusion of cash, will be hurting. And that's what universities will have to plan for in the future.
And what are some ways that colleges can best prepare themselves to face these tighter budgets?
So I think they're going to have to look at freezes and cuts. And the first place I would look is athletics, because of course it may not even come back the way we think it will. The Drake Group has put out a list of suggestions in their latest news release, and I think that it's a good start. They've said that there should be an immediate freeze on any new athletics facilities or changes to athletics facilities. They should freeze salaries. There should be temporary cuts for the highest paid coaches. They should look at the assistant coaching staff to see if there are too many people, and look at how they're allocating money in terms of sharing their athletic events as well. How much are they spending on production on athletic events that may not be going forward? And so that's a good way to cut some athletic spending. I think administration comes next. I think first and foremost, there need to be cuts on the number of administrators per student. And I don't think that it has to go to zero, obviously, but it should go back to maybe where we were in 2000 instead of the high levels that we are at today. Some universities have a 2-to-1 ratio of staff to faculty, and especially right now, that's just too many staff members. High paid administrators should also experience the same kind of cuts that athletic coaches do. I would say a 10% cut to any employee making over $100,000. And some universities have already started to do that. Syracuse, I think, was the first one to announce exactly that plan, 10% for coaches and highly paid administrators. And I think lastly, universities can look at some low-performing academic programs. Georgia did this a few years ago just because they wanted to be economically efficient. They looked at any program that didn't have at least 10 graduates and considered cutting or consolidating that program with another one. And I think that would be a good move for a lot of universities. And universities that have systems, like the University of North Carolina, can even look system-wide to see, are we teaching Spanish language education in every university? And maybe we can cut that down so we're only doing it in 8 of our universities instead of all 16, in order to make use of the system that they have and the resources across the system instead of expecting every university to offer every major. Obviously, universities should freeze any capital projects. If more classes are going to be online or students won't be able to congregate, it doesn't make sense to build more facilities. And I think that if there are true facilities crunches, just moving a couple of classes online can get universities over the hump until it makes sense to start spending again. And so I think that those are some sensible moves that universities can make that protect the core, the teaching at universities and enable them to move forward.
Great. Uh, Other typical college activities have also been greatly impacted. Currently, all classes are being held online, like you said, or mentioned online, and due to social distancing measures. Uh, what do you think classroom education will look like in the long term, but also this fall?
So in the long term, I think that this right now it's a learning opportunity, and we're finding out, and professors are finding out what works and what doesn't, what technologies are useful and what technologies are not useful, what are students willing to do. And I think we're mostly finding out what kind of courses and what kind of activities can be done well online. And I think that there will be some where professors and students realize, hey, this is better online, and those things will continue to be online. But I think most students and most professors would prefer to be in person, especially for seminar courses. And we'll see a lot of push to go back to those methods as soon as it's safe to do so. That said, there have been a lot of universities that have already committed to opening either mostly business as usual, or as much as business as usual as they can in the fall, including Radford University and Purdue, Brown University, and some other universities across the country have already made the announcement that they will have in-person classes in fall. And so I think that we'll see a combination. It'll be a laboratory of university experimentation to see what works and what doesn't, because some universities, especially in hard hit areas, will make the decision that they want to stay closed or stay online, and students will have to make the decision about what they want to do based on what's available and what their universities are doing.
And what about college athletics? Social distancing isn't really possible in contact sports.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think the biggest risk comes from the crowds, not from the players themselves. Because with the players, you have a roster. You know exactly who those students are. You know who they're playing against. You can do test and trace for athletes, and you can take their temperature. You can monitor them very closely to make sure they're not sick when they're playing, that they're not sick during practices. I think the harder part will be crowds, because nameless, faceless, giant crowds we've seen the reason that there have been kind of super spreading events like Mardi Gras. So I think that what we may see is that some sports come back without audiences. Also, Major League Baseball has been announcing plans to come back in some way, maybe as soon as May. And so there may be lessons for universities from what Major League Baseball does. And then, of course, some sports like golf or tennis, won't be impacted at all. Those things can go ahead as planned. And so I think it's going to be a case by case basis to see, what's safe.
What do you think students are going to do if their classes continue to be held online into the fall?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, because obviously there's been pushback already from students who say that they want a refund or a partial refund because they're not getting what they thought they were going to get. And I think there's a hesitancy from students and from parents to pay the same thing for an online course that they would for an in-person course, because the experience is not the same and it's not what they signed up for. And so I think that there will be a lot of people rethinking what they're going to do in the fall. I mean, for high school seniors, obviously there's a lot of churn right now. Some of them didn't get to take the SAT or retake the SAT if they wanted to. Others are, probably struggling to get to finish up their learning that they want to do before college, maybe finish their AP credits. And so I think that fall is going to be a confusing time. I think maybe some freshmen may decide to take a gap year. I think other students may decide to stay closer to home. I think we'll see a variety of responses from students, and I think it'll depend really on the individual and what they want from a college education. If they want to be there for the experience, they may choose a different university based on the fact that one university is reopening and another isn't. So it'll be interesting to see.
No, it will for sure. Do you foresee a wave of institutions closing because of low enrollment?
I don't know if it'll be a wave of institutions, but I know of at least one that already has. And I think what we're going to see is that universities that were already um, in the red financially, or had small endowments, had low enrollment already, some of those might close. I don't know if a wave is the right word. That may be too strong,
Mm,
but certainly there will be closures. And I think it's going to be the small private liberal arts institutions that are hit hardest, which is really unfortunate.
no, that is really unfortunate. Oh, Jenna, well, thank you so much for your insights on how colleges can navigate this really unprecedented crisis. The Martin Center is going to continue to keep a close watch on the developments of the coronavirus and how it affects higher education. Please stay tuned for any other further policy recommendations from the Martin Center. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Shannon.